The chamber of the Supreme Conclave was a vast, circular expanse of polished obsidian, cold enough to mist the breath. Hundreds of alien dignitaries from a dozen conquered worlds sat in tiered galleries, their various appendages stilled in rapt silence. At the center, elevated on a dais of crystallized agony, sat the supreme ruler Xylos. His form was a towering mass of chitin and cold blue light, his many-faceted eyes reflecting the scene below with detached amusement. Below him, representing the latest species to be formally absorbed into his eternal dominion, stood a single human. Her name was Captain Ilara Vance. Her uniform was simple, unadorned, functional. Her dark hair was cropped short, and her face bore the dust and a small healing cut from the battle that had ended in a tactical, not a moral, defeat. Her ship, the Defiant, had been her command. Now it was a drifting hulk, its crew in Dominion medical bays. She was the only one well enough to stand trial, or what passed for a trial here. Xylos's voice was not a sound that traveled through air, but a vibration that resonated directly in the bones of all present. It was the voice of mountains falling and oceans boiling. "You are the representative of Terra," Xylos resonated. It was not a question. "Your species is a delightful paradox. You wage war with the passion of Krell, yet you weep for individual loss. You build empires on paper, then tear them down with ideals. You are soft. You are inefficient." He gestured a massive serrated claw towards a holographic display. It showed a montage of human history. Wars, famines, disasters. "We have analyzed your species. You fight each other with the ferocity of cornered beasts, yet you show mercy to your enemies. You value the life of a single artist above the strategic necessity of 1,000 soldiers. This is weakness. It is the weakness of a larval species, one that has not yet learned the cold, clean logic of the universe." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Threxian ambassador, a slug-like creature, oozed with satisfaction. The avian Krail, whose world had been glassed for a similar inefficiency, ruffled their feathers in bitter agreement. Xylos leaned forward, the light in his facets intensifying. "And yet you resist. Your little ship damaged one of our harvesters. You killed 300 of our drone soldiers. For this, your world will now be classified as hostile. The terms of your absorption will not be assimilation, but subjugation. Your museums will be emptied. Your history will be erased. Your leaders will be made examples of, all because you could not simply kneel." Captain Vance shifted her weight from one boot to the other. Her eyes, a calm, steady gray, swept across the assembled court. She saw no malice in their faces, only a chilling, logical certainty. To them, this wasn't cruelty, it was arithmetic. "We understand the logic," Ilara said. Her voice was clear, unamplified, yet it cut through the bone vibration of the ruler. It was a sound made of air and breath. "We understand that you see mercy as a resource deficit. You see art as a non-utilitarian expenditure. You see an individual life as a component part." "Precisely," Xylos resonated, a sound of satisfaction. You see the truth of it?" "I see the truth of a predator explaining to its prey why it must be eaten," Ilara replied. "It's not truth. It's just hunger dressed up in a uniform." A sharp, venomous silence fell. The Threxian ambassador stopped oozing. The Krail froze. Xylos's facets dimmed, then blazed with cold fire. No one spoke to the supreme ruler thus. No one. "Your defiance is noted," Xylos vibrated, the frequency dropping to something dangerous and subsonic. "And it will be recorded. You will be the first example. Your pain will be the lesson that teaches your world its place. Your name will be a curse word in the mouths of your descendants." He raised a claw, a command to the guards. The audience was over. But Ilara didn't move. She didn't flinch. She looked up at the vast, chitinous entity. at the Emperor of 1,000 stars, and she smiled. It wasn't a smile of bravery. It wasn't the grimace of a martyr. It was the small, private smile of a chess player who sees the board 5 moves ahead. "Try me," she said. The 2 words hung in the air, heavier than any threat Xylos could have issued. They were not a challenge born of desperation. They were an invitation, a guarantee. Xylos's claw froze mid-air. For the first time in 500 years of conquest, he felt something he had not catalogued. It was not anger. Anger was a tool he understood. This was uncertainty. The human was not afraid. Her biosignatures, which his implants read constantly, showed none of the elevated cortisol, the accelerated heart rate of a cornered animal. She was calm, confident. "Explain," he commanded, the single word vibrating with a new, unfamiliar frequency. Ilara took a step closer to the dais. The guards hesitated. The ruler had not dismissed them. "You studied our wars," she said. "You saw us fight each other. You saw our famines and our failures, but you missed the point. You looked at our history and saw a species that couldn't stop hurting itself. What you should have seen was a species that survived its own worst impulses." She paused, letting her gaze travel across the assembled conquerors. "We didn't survive because we were the strongest. We weren't. We survived because we were the most stubborn. You think mercy is weakness? You think valuing one life over a strategic goal is inefficient? Tell that to the soldiers who carried their wounded brothers across muddy fields for miles. Tell that to the scientists who stayed in plague-ridden cities to find a cure. Tell that to the parents who went without food so their children could eat." She turned back to Xylos. "You conquered the Krail in 3 weeks. They were faster, stronger, had better weapons. But when you broke their lines, they surrendered. Their chain of command collapsed. They saw the logic of defeat." She looked at the avian ambassadors. They did not meet her eyes. "You conquered the Threxians in a month. They tried to negotiate. They offered you tribute, territory, technology. They saw the logic of appeasement." The slug-like ambassador shrunk into itself. "You've never faced a species that doesn't see the logic," Ilara said. "You've never faced humans." Xylos's claws clenched, the chitin creaking. "You are one ship, one crew, one species, still bleeding from its own internal wars. You are not an exception. You are an example of the rule." "Then why haven't you killed me yet?" Ilara asked. The question was simple, devastating. "You've executed ambassadors before. You've glassed worlds for less than a damaged harvester. But here I am, standing in your throne room, telling you to try me, and you're hesitating." She took another step. The guards moved, but Xylos raised a claw again, stopping them. "You're hesitating," Ilara continued, "because for the first time in 500 years, you're looking at a species you don't understand. And you're afraid. Not of our ships, not of our weapons. You're afraid of what we might do when we have nothing left to lose." The silence stretched. The cold light in Xylos's facets flickered, dimmed, steadied. When he spoke again, the bone vibration was quieter, almost conversational. "What would you do?" he asked. "Your ship is destroyed. Your crew is captive. Your world is undefended. What can one human do against an empire?" Ilara reached into her pocket. Every weapon in the room trained on her instantly. Energy rifles hummed. Plasma casters glowed. But she withdrew only a small, flat device, a data chip. "This," she said, "is the complete historical, cultural, and scientific archive of humanity. Every book ever written, every song ever composed, every formula ever discovered, every mistake we ever made, and every lesson we learned from it." She held it up between thumb and forefinger. "You can kill me. You can glass Earth. You can erase every human from the universe. But you cannot erase this. Because before I left, I transmitted it to 1,000 stealth probes, programmed to scatter in every direction." They're out there now, accelerating to light speed, carrying everything we are to every corner of this galaxy and beyond. She placed the chip on the dais at the base of Xylos's throne. So go ahead. Try me. Kill me. Destroy my world. But know that somewhere, out in the dark, a piece of us is still flying. And it's not running away. It's looking for a place to land, to grow, to remember. You can't kill an idea, Xylos. And humanity? We're the species that turned ideas into weapons. Xylos stared at the small chip. It was inert, unremarkable. A sliver of metal and silicon worth less than a single Dominion power cell. Yet it sat before him like a neutron star, dense with impossible gravity. You would scatter your legacy to the void, he resonated slowly, on the chance that some distant world might one day find it. That is not strategy. That is faith. Yes, Alara said. It is. For the first time, the supreme ruler of the Eternal Dominion had nothing to say. His vast intelligence, which had calculated the trajectory of armies and the economies of star systems, encountered a variable it could not process. A species that measured victory not in territory won, but in stories told. A species that, faced with extinction, chose not to bargain for survival, but to ensure remembrance. The chamber remained frozen. The ambassadors watched, the guards waited, and Xylos, the conqueror of worlds, looked at the small, dust-covered human and saw something he had never seen before. He saw the beginning of the end of certainty. The hours that followed were unlike any in the history of the Dominion. Xylos retreated to his private sanctum, as a spherical chamber of absolute darkness where he could interface directly with the Dominion's central intelligence network. He did not meditate, as was his custom. He did not review conquest reports or approve resource allocations. He sat in the void, and he thought. The human's words replayed in his cognitive architecture. You can't kill an idea. It was a primitive notion, the kind of mysticism his species had evolved beyond 1,000,000 years ago. Ideas were patterns of neural electricity, ephemeral, dependent on biological substrates. Destroy the substrate, destroy the idea. This was incontrovertible. And yet, he accessed the Dominion's records of human military history. He had reviewed them before, of course, during the preliminary threat assessment, but he had reviewed them as an engineer reviews a faulty component, seeking weaknesses to exploit. Now he reviewed them as an archaeologist reviews a ruin, seeking to understand the people who built it. He found patterns he had missed. Not in the grand strategies or the decisive battles, but in the margins. The letters home from soldiers who knew they would not survive. The diary entries of civilians in besieged cities, recording recipes and poetry between air raid sirens. The photographs, tens of millions of them, carried by soldiers into combat, tucked close to hearts that would soon stop beating. He found the story of a city called Leningrad, besieged for 900 days. The people starved. They ate their pets, their leather shoes, wallpaper paste. 1,000,000 of them died. And yet, throughout the siege, the city's radio station continued to broadcast. Not military communiques, not propaganda, a metronome. Tick-tock, tick-tock. To tell the world and to tell themselves that they were still there, still alive, still human. Xylos processed this information. His cold, logical mind calculated the tactical value of a metronome in a siege. The result was 0. It did not break the enemy lines. It did not deliver food. It did not save a single life. And yet, he accessed the human's file. Captain Elara Vance, born in a place called Montana on the North American continent. Agricultural region. Parents were what humans called ranchers, raising herd animals for food. Her service record was unremarkable by Dominion standards. No extraordinary physical capabilities. No genius-level intellect. She had simply done her duty, advanced through the ranks, commanded her ship with competence. She was not exceptional. But she had looked at the supreme ruler of the eternal dominion, in the heart of his power, surrounded by his legions, and she had smiled. Not a warrior's smile, a mother's smile, patient, knowing. Try me. Xylos made a decision. It was not a logical decision. It did not optimize for any measurable outcome. It was, in the truest sense of the word, an act of faith. He reconvened the conclave. The chamber filled again, the ambassadors taking their places with visible confusion. Such a rapid reconvening was unprecedented. The guards stood at attention. The holographic displays flickered to life. Xylos entered. His form seemed different somehow, not diminished, but altered. The cold blue light in his facets had warmed, almost imperceptibly, to something closer to white. He did not ascend to his dais. Instead, he stopped at the base, on where the humans still stood. She had not been moved. She had not been fed. She had not slept. Yet she stood as she had hours ago, steady, patient. "Captain Ilara Vance," Xylos resonated. The vibration was softer now, the subsonic threat gone. "I have reviewed your species' history, not your wars, your people. I have reviewed your art, your music, your literature. I have reviewed your Leningrad, your Hiroshima, your September 11th. I have reviewed what you do when you have nothing left but each other." He paused. The chamber was utterly silent. "I was wrong," he said. The words fell like stones into still water. The Threxian ambassador's mouth parts opened and closed soundlessly. The Krail ruffled their feathers in shock. Even the guards, trained to absolute discipline, shifted their weight. I classified your mercy as weakness," Xylos continued. "I classified your art as inefficiency. I classified your individual lives as expendable components. This was error, not tactical error, philosophical error. I measured your species against Dominion standards and found you wanting. I did not consider that the standards themselves might be wanting." He extended a claw, not in threat, but in gesture, towards the data chip still sitting on the dais. "This chip contains your history. Your wars, yes, your famines, your plagues, your cruelties, but it also contains your recoveries, your cures, your kindnesses. It contains the metronome of Leningrad. It contains the photographs your soldiers carried. It contains a billion small acts of unreasonable hope." He retracted his claw. The light in his facets steadied. "The Dominion has existed for 10,000 years. In that time, we have encountered 9,427 sentient species. We have absorbed or destroyed 9,426 of them. We have never encountered a species that, faced with extinction, chose remembrance over surrender. We have never encountered a species that measured victory in stories told." He looked at Ilara. For the first time, he addressed her not as a subject, but as an equal. "What do you want, Captain?" Ilara met his gaze. "I want my crew released. I want my ship repaired. I want a non-aggression treaty between Earth and the Dominion, with mutually agreed terms and independent arbitration." "These are reasonable requests," Xylos acknowledged. "They will be granted. What else?" Ilara was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "I want you to understand, not just with your mind, with whatever it is you have that feels." Xylos considered this. His species had not had a word for feel in their language for 7 million years. Emotion was a primitive survival mechanism, outgrown, discarded. And yet, "I do not know if I am capable of this," he said. "Understanding. It is not a Dominion skill." "Then learn," Ilara said. "That's what we do. We learn. We fail. We learn again. We take the metronome with us and we keep ticking." The silence stretched. Then slowly, Xylos did something unprecedented. He lowered his massive form, folding his legs beneath him, bringing his many-faceted eyes level with the human woman's. "Teach me," he said, and so she did. The Dominion's expansion paused that day, not because of a treaty, not because of a defeat, but because its supreme ruler sat in a cold chamber with a dust-covered human and learned about poetry, about why humans wrote sonnets to lovers they would never see again, about why they carved statues of soldiers who died in wars long forgotten, about why they broadcast a metronome into the silence of a 900-day siege. The ambassadors watched in bewilderment. The guards stood frozen. The vast machinery of the Eternal Dominion ground to a halt because one human had looked at an alien god and said two impossible words, "Try me." And the god had tried, and the god had failed, and in failing had begun, for the first time in 10,000 years, to learn. The human crew of the Defiant were released that evening. They were confused, hungry, frightened. They were brought to the throne chamber, expecting to witness their captain's execution. Instead, they found her sitting cross-legged on the polished obsidian floor, the supreme ruler of the Eternal Dominion hunched over her like a student at a master's knee, listening as she explained the concept of metaphor. "It's not literally true," she was saying. "The sun isn't actually a golden coin, but the comparison makes you see it differently. It makes you feel the value of it, the warmth, the scarcity if you've been in the dark too long." Xylos's facets cycled through colors, processing. "You overlay false information onto sensory data to generate emotional response." "Yes, that's exactly what it is." "This is illogical." "Yes." "Why do you do it?" Ilara smiled. "Because the truth isn't enough. The truth is just facts. We need meaning. A metaphor is how we make meaning from facts." Xylos was silent for a long time. Then slowly his facets settled on a soft, warm amber. "The sun," he resonated quietly, "is also like a wound in the darkness, a cut that bleeds light." Ilara's smile widened. "Yes, exactly like that." The crew stood in the doorway, watching their captain teach poetry to an alien emperor. They did not understand what had happened. They did not understand how they had gone from captives to students, from conquered to teachers. But they understood, with the deep, stubborn certainty of their species, that something extraordinary had begun. The Dominion did not withdraw from Earth's space. It did not apologize for its conquests or release its other subject worlds. 10,000 years of empire does not unravel in a single conversation. But Xylos established something unprecedented. An embassy, not a Dominion administrative outpost, but a place of exchange. Human scholars traveled to Dominion worlds. Dominion scientists visited Earth. They did not become friends. The gulf was too vast, the history too bloody. But they became something else. They became students of each other. Years later, on a small agricultural world in Montana, an old woman sat on a porch overlooking fields of wheat. She was a captain no longer. Her hair had gone gray, her face lined with the passage of decades. She had lived a full life, raised a family, watched her species take its first uncertain steps into a wider, stranger universe than it had ever imagined. A shadow fell across the yard. Not a ship. A presence. She looked up, and there he was. Xylos, supreme ruler of the Eternal Dominion. In his massive chitinous form, somehow folded into the small space, his facets glowing with that soft, warm amber. "Captain," he resonated. "Just Ilara now," she said. "I retired." "I know. I came to say goodbye." She nodded slowly. "The Council?" "They have agreed. The Dominion will dissolve. It will take generations, perhaps centuries. But the process has begun. The subject worlds will be freed. The old ways will end." "Because of a metaphor," Ilara said. "Because of many metaphors," Xylos corrected. "Because of sonnets and statues and metronomes. Because of a human who looked at a god and said, 'Try me.'" He paused. Because I finally understand what you meant. You cannot kill an idea, but you can plant one, water it with patience, watch it grow. Ilara smiled. The same smile, patient and knowing, that she had worn in his throne room 50 years ago. Did it hurt? She asked. Learning to feel again after 7 million years? Yes, Xylos said. It hurt very much. It still hurts. Every day I process emotions I have no framework for. Grief, regret, hope. They are inefficient. They cloud strategic thinking. They make me weak. He paused. His facets dimmed, then brightened. I have never been stronger. Ilara reached out and placed her hand on his claw. Her skin was thin, spotted with age. His chitin was cool, smooth, hard as starship armor. They stayed that way for a long moment, two impossibly different beings connected by a single, unreasonable idea. Thank you, Xylos said, for not kneeling. Thank you, Ilara replied, for trying. The shadow lifted. The presence withdrew. The old woman sat alone on her porch, watching the wheat sway in the Montana wind. Above her, the sky was vast and full of stars. Somewhere out there, a species was learning to unmake its empire. Somewhere out there, the stories of Earth were being told to beings who had never heard a metaphor, never wept, never hoped. Somewhere out there, the metronome was still ticking, and the sun, that golden wound in the darkness, bled light across the fields.